this webinar. Please, as you kindly join in, you can rename yourself. That's if you don't have your name on your screen, so that we will just know you by name on your screen. Thank you, even as you do that. And one house rule, please kindly mute your mic so that we'll be able to hear the speaker for today. And I'll be the moderator this evening. By name Nanchin Winifred Kaze from Aplori. And talking to us this evening is our good professor, Professor Ulf Ottosson. Is the NIBOB coordinator. And today, Professor Ottosson will be talking to us about field ornithology and complicated species. How complicated it is, we all have our individual challenges, but we are privileged today to hear some or part of the solution to the problems that we have. And I hope that by the end of this webinar, we'll be able to like confidently go out to the field and be able to identify some of these complicated species. So right now, let's welcome the professor. Professor Ulf, you're welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you for all for taking your time to listen to me. Mainly familiar face to and names to me, but I will especially thank Professor Den Loye for taking his time to join this meeting. I guess you are all in the hot and nice Nigeria, whereas I'm in a warm Sweden. We have a warm evening here in end of September with 14 degrees. So you don't need jacket on, just go out with t-shirt. And but if it's 14 degrees in Jos, I think it's very cold, but here it's warm in September. So this is the peculiarities with climate and weather in the world. So let me share my screen and today's topic. Field ornithology and some bird identification problems. The field of ornithology and the field of field ornithology is about being out in the field, and to do that you need equipment. And one thing you need is some sort of optical equipment. Most often it's binoculars or telescope or camera. Then you need a notebook to take notes what you see. When we are doing atlasing, we use our phones at notebook, the bird atlas, the bird lasso app. You also need appropriate clothes, so you don't need to worry what you are doing. So optical equipment is glass, and therefore you need to be a bit careful with your handle them. The most normal one, usual, is binocular. You can do ornithology without binocular, but the experience will be so much enhanced if you have binoculars. And since we are starting in Nigeria and now spreading with bird watching, we are trying to provide binoculars, but it's a big challenge. But and anyone who come up with a good solution how we can get good but relatively cheap binoculars into Nigeria, is very most welcome. To look at birds at a little bit more distance or more details, a telescope is very good to have. And since the magnification of a telescope is quite high, from 20 times 20 and up, you need a tripod. But you shouldn't neglect the fact that you have a phone. And most often, if you want to document something, most phones can take a picture of a bird that is much, much more than nothing. Even a very crap photo at a distance can help the identification if you don't know what it is yourself. And with some training, you can use your phone, the camera on your phone, to take pictures, either through a telescope, but even through your binoculars. And then you magnify what you get into your phone, and this is even better. It's a bit tricky, but if you practice, you can do it. And I know many of you are doing it. So when you have a binocular, precious thing, please handle with care. Don't drop it. Clean lenses carefully with a soft cloth, or just blow away the dust. There are special equipment, brushes, lens papers, and things. Use that if you have. Most binoculars stand water, but if it gets more rain and your binocular is not of a type that likes a lot of water, carry a plastic bag in your pocket so you can handle it, so you can wrap it around the binocular if you get a heavy downpour. To help identification and learn more about birds, books are important. The field guide we use is not this one, but a part from this one. And Birds of Western Africa, that is what is handy in Nigeria. But there are books for all over, every other place. And they're also a bit hard to get hand on. So we are trying to do that also, to bring them in for a cheap price to Nigeria to get it available for people. If you want to learn a little bit more about birds, there are handbooks, big books with a lot of text about the ecology and everything of birds. And that one you can find it on Google Books maybe, or in a library. If you're close to Aplori in Jos, we have a lot of these books at Aplori for reading there. And then there are a lot of other books for more specialized books. Notebook is good to have to record your observations and make sketches. It should slip into your pocket. Should preferably be hardcover, so it's a bit sturdy. Use pencil because ink tends to be a bit messy during rain. When it comes to clothes, you can wear most anything, but it should be clothes that you feel comfortable in. And the rest is taste. So the most important thing is to feel birds fly. But not all birds fly. We have penguins, we have ostriches. And another thing with birds is that they lay egg. So when you think about the general characteristics of birds, it's probably these three things: flight, feathers, and eggs. But let's talk a little bit about ostrich first. How many species do we have in Africa? Anyone? We know that we used to have one in Nigeria. This is the one we have here. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. The last place it used to be regular is Sambisa, which show that Sambisa is an open place. It's not the forest, it's not a jungle. Nothing can hide in Sambisa, not even an ostrich. So the last was killed. If anyone say that anything can hide in Sambisa, they are lying. That was another story. So there are ostriches in Cameroon, so sometimes they come into the eastern part of Nigeria still. Other ostriches that you see in Nigeria now, they are farmed. We actually have two species of ostrich in Africa. We have a normal ostrich that we're used to see, and we have this one with blue neck and blue legs, which is the Somali ostrich, which you find in Ethiopia and Somalia and Somaliland. Somali ostrich. So we talked about the general characteristics about birds, and that birds fly. But it's not only birds that fly, right? We have bats, see them large flocks in around Plateau and other places during the time for ripe fruits like mango. We have flying squirrels, we have flying fish, flying squirrels, and even flying snakes. So even if most birds fly and it's the general characteristics of birds, it's not only birds that fly. So what about egg? Well, we have monotremata. That is the platypus and echinida in Australia, who also lay eggs. They are actually mammals, but they lay egg. And then, of course, most snakes and lizards lay eggs. So eggs is not unique for birds. What is unique for birds is feathers, but actually prehistoric dinosaurs, they had feathers. And this is from a fossil found in India, China many years ago. But birds are the only living organism now that have feathers. So when it comes to systematics, birds belong to Chordata and subphylum Vertebrata. There we are together. When they are their own class, they have others. They have 3 legs and they have an amniote egg. In general, the systematics of birds is that today we have about more than 11,000 species. When I started to watch birds some few years ago, it was 8,600 birds. Now these 11,000 species are divided up in 41 orders, 150 families, and about 2,000 genera. And on the picture down here, we have these different orders. So the interesting thing is that these 31 orders, 40 of them is what we call non-passeriformes. And 1 order is the passeriformes, the songbirds, the perching birds. So here is all these 31 orders. And here is the examples of non-passeriformes. Different kinds from ostrich, flamingo, everything you can think of. Parrots, raptors, and anything. And then you have 1 order, the passeriformes, the songbirds. And nota bene, only 1 order. And that is, but they consist about half the species of the world. And they are often small, but not always, because also pied crow and ravens belong to passeriformes. But they are not also the smallest birds, because the smallest birds of the world, as you may now know, is hummingbirds. And hummingbirds from the New World, South America and North America, they are non-passeriformes. So if you go to a place like Plateau, this is representatives of the passeriform birds we have in Plateau. First, we have the rock firefinch, the Jos Plateau indigo bird, which actually is not a Jos Plateau indigo bird here, but I used to say it because it's hard to get pictures of it. But it's actually village indigo bird, which people will see if they see the leg. Then we have a white-crowned cliffchat, the logo for Aplori. We have birds like oriole warbler, migrants like tree-pipit, sulfur-breasted bushrike or orange-breasted bushrike, paradise flycatcher, different kinds of glossy starlings and African blue flycatcher. This is nice examples of passeriform birds. When it comes to birds in Nigeria, we have about 920 species. And the non-passeriforms are in 50, we have 55 families of non-passeriformers. And the most species-rich family among the non-passeriformers is Accipitridae, which is the raptors, but not including the falcons, because they are in their own order now. Among the passeriformers, we have 31 families, where the Sylvidae, the warblers with 81 species, is the biggest grouping of birds. Here's YellowBill Kite as the representative of a non-passeriformers. And then a migrant warbler, the willow warbler. The problem with bird watching is that when we look at birds in the book, there are nice colors, they're easy to see and distinguish. But if you look at the bird in the field, if often sitting far away, bad light, and you don't see all of it. So to know more about what you see, you need to take care of looking to things like behavior. That is very important. What does a bird do? Does it fly, run, swim? Where and when did you see it? Timing and space is important. Where is it? In which habitat? Where in the habitat? Whether the bird on the ground or in the air or in the canopy. Seasonality. Some birds are migrants, so you can't see them all year around. So all this together makes it, if you can answer this question, you will come closer to what you see. So how and then you come to how a bird look like. How do they fly? The shape of a bird. The wings, how does a wing look? The tail, body. The size. Size can be tricky because you can be hard to see what distance they are from you. But you try to measure the size by looking at the familiar bird around or some familiar obstacle or something that you know the size of. And then plumage, of course, is important. If you can see the characters of a plumage. If you put these all together, we call it G's. That is the entire impression that the observer receives when observing a bird, all characters together, which include plumage, size, shape, way of flying, behavior. You may not be able to say exactly what it is that told you what it is, but the summary of what you saw make you end up in a conclusion. So when you look at birds, it's important that you can describe them. And then birds have different wing shapes, from elliptical, very pointed, broad and pointed, very long and broad. And these show how the lifestyle of a bird, and it's important for you to be able to distinguish them. Tails also comes in a long, different shapes, long and short, square, rounded, pointed, emarginated, and forked, and even more. All birds have bills, and bills also show the lifestyle of the bird, what they're eating. The hummingbird, they eat nectar. The duck is browsing on the water, not browsing, it's babbling, or it's grazing. Warblers are picking insects, finches are crushing nuts, herons are spearing fish, woodpecker are sizzling out nest cavities, but also use their bill to get worms and things inside the wood. Sandpipers probe into the mud to get food. And the hawk has a bill that you can tear flesh with. In all bird books, there is a page like this where you can see the different names of a bird, which is important when you want to describe it for someone else or for yourself. And the same for wings. You have different names for different parts of the wing. So what shall you do to when you are want to bird watch? Well, you need to read books to see what variety there are out there. And then there's no shortcuts. So you need to spend a lot of time in the field to get that impression of birds. See them often in different angles and different distances and different lights and everything. However, it will take time and you will not know every species direct, but you will learn. The more time you are in the field, you will learn more and more. And a good way to spend a lot of time in the field and make a good effort and a good thing at the same time is to do atlasing. And if you want to do that, if you don't do it, talk with us, Plateau, Nanshin, we will help you forward. So now to some tricky birds. I will start with a little bit what I have last time, just to, everyone was not here and I just browse through some of what I said last time. One part of it, what is tricky for us is the taxonomy. It's changing all the time. So bird species are split to more than one species. It's also that some birds are hard to identify. And when we work with different books and different apps, we have different names. If you want to learn about the taxonomy of birds, you can use, for example, the IOC bird list that you find on the web, internet. But the problem is that there is two more big taxonomies in the world. There is Clements and the Howard and Moore. Clements is used by eBird, and Howard and Moore is used by different people. And these are not 100% compatible. They are working towards one list, but you know, there is prideness and things that involved here. So it's not very easy. We work in Nigerian Bird Atlas and African Bird Atlas and South African Bird Atlas. We work with IOC, and IOC stands for International Ornithological Congress. So I think it's important that we all try to follow that. But should be aware that some species are not acknowledged by all. And so it's not easy, but most species are acknowledged by all, but there are some that will be different in that sense. When it comes to splitting, last time I talked about cinnamon-breasted bunting, or cinnamon-breasted rock bunting, that now have been split into what is in West Africa as Gosling's bunting. Cinnamon-breasted bunting is the bunting now that you find in East and South Africa. Mock and cliffchat have been split to what we have now in West Africa, the white crown cliffchat. The mock and cliffchat is confined to East Africa, Ethiopia, and South. And they don't have a white head. So that is why we have white-crowned cliffshed. Greyback Camaroptera is what we have in Nigeria, but it's still a bit confusing there. But greenback Camaroptera is in Southwest Africa, and not here. Fork-tailed drongo have been split to glossyback drongo. The problem for us atlasers is that glossyback drongo is not in the database, so until up to now, we need to continue with fork-tailed drongo. And then the fork-tailed drongo or the glossyback drongo sister or brother in the forest is YellowBill mantled drongo. So this is a complication. Square-tailed drongo that you have in the forest that also move a bit with the range, so you can see it in more forested places of Plateau, for example. But square-tailed drongo is now split to sharp drongo. So if you see any drongo in Nigeria, you should be labeled as sharp drongo. So here just to show that greyback Camaroptera is a Camaroptera that is most part of Africa. Greenback Camaroptera is confined to Southeast, East and Southeast Africa. One problem we have is YellowBill kite and black kite, because in most books we have, even our African YellowBill kite is labeled as black kite. But the black kite is most often now split into YellowBill kite that is breeds in Africa, and the black kite, which is in European migrant. And YellowBill kite, the important thing to have in mind is that juvenile YellowBill kite has black bills. The former the former black kite has a very large distribution. So what is mainly in red here is a breeding range of a black kite. Here in Asia, India and China, we have both wintering areas for the black kite, but we also have the same thing like their YellowBill kite. It's called lineated kite. So you also split it. So and here in Africa, we have YellowBill kite breeding, but black kite come here during the non-breeding season. And then again, in Australia, there's a fourth species. So black kite have been split into four species. So we are concerned about YellowBill kite and black kite. So to go through it quickly is that the YellowBill kite is a bit smaller than black kite. It's more uniformly colored. It has more deeply forked tail and distinctly barred tail. The black kite is has more like some more whites in it, paler head that is contrasting to the rest of the body. And so the big problem with YellowBill kite is the juveniles that has black bills, or not yellow bills. So here to the left, we have typically YellowBill kite with yellow bill, uniform brown color. To the right here, we have black kite, you see, with a gray head and black bill and yellow cere. And there is more on the underwing when they fly like this. There's quite some contrast between different parts of the wing, and the tail is just shallowly forked. So here is a YellowBill kite juvenile. You see with black bill and yellow cere, like in the black kite. But like most juvenile raptors. This is very mottled. It has white edges to all its feathers, especially in different parts of the wing here with different covers. So now to some new tricky birds. There are something that we called little green jobs. And here are some little green jobs that we can find in Nigeria. We have up to the right, WoodWobbler, WoodWobbler, ChiefChef, and Bonelli's warbler. Most widespread in Nigeria is WoodWobbler and WoodWobbler. ChiefChef and Bonelli's warbler, you will mainly come across in the northern part of the country. If you look at this bird, which is a WoodWobbler, you see here to the left, we have a juvenile bird, like how they look when they arrive to Nigeria, quite yellowish. To the right, we have an adult bird, which is much more pale underneath. Some of the juveniles start to molt some of their body feathers already before they migrate, but the first molt will not be until after Christmas. So then they will, after that, they will look more like the bird to the right. So juvenile to the left and adult to the right. The WoodWobbler here, the distribution is all the way from Britain all the way to Eastern Russia. It's a very huge distribution. But all birds migrate to Africa, even these birds migrating all the way to the Pacific Sea here in the eastern part of Russia. It means that over this area, you have a lot of variation and where birds fly and how they look like. These birds in eastern Russia, they look like this. You can see they are very brown, not gray, not green like this, totally different from the green bird. Even in northern Sweden, we can have birds that are this gray. And Sweden is here. And these birds from southern Sweden here, they migrate to West Africa, whereas the birds in northern Sweden here, they go southeast to East Africa and all the way to southern Africa. So this is the most common bird in Sweden. It weighs without fat 6-7 grams, with fat up to 10-11 grams. And it migrates all the way from far east to Africa, from northern Sweden to Africa, and from southern Sweden to Africa. So the characteristics for WoodWobbler is that it's quite pale, not white on the breast. If you look at the eyebrow, it's quite prominent, more yellow in front of the eye than behind the eye. And it has pale legs. So what do we have here? Here we have a warmer green bird with a lot of green on the wing, and it seems like it's white underneath. So it's yellow and white. So here we have WoodWobbler. The WoodWobbler breeds also in large part of Europe. It migrates down to Africa. It spends most of its time actually inside the real rainforest or in edges of forest clearings. So in areas like Jos and most part of Nigeria, it's only passing by around this time of year, September, and then back north in April, March, April. Then it can be quite numerous some days. So you can see plenty of them at the time. But in the middle of what we call winter, from like October to February, You won't see them in places like yours and down quite south, and not the north at all. So compared to willow warbler, you should look for the yellow throat, contrasting with a very white belly. It has a green edge to this flight feather. We call it green panel. So it's the outer edge of the flight feathers has a green form, very nice green color. The whole supercilium is bright yellow. If you remember the willow warbler, it was more white behind the eye. So this is straight yellow. And of course, I have different calls. If you want to listen to the calls, you have your apps, I guess, Birds of Africa or Senocanto. And Senocanto, if you Google Senocanto with X, you will find all bird calls of the world, more or less. The next species is quite similar to, in a way, to the WoodWobbler. It has this similar green on the wing. It's white on the belly, but that's not yellow. What is very typical for Bonelli's warbler is that when you see it, it looks like half the bird is gray, the front part of the bird is gray, and the back part is green. So it's like a two-colored bird, gray and green. And then we have a ChiefChef. The ChiefChef breeds in large part of Europe, but there are different subspecies. So continental Europe here is one called Philoscopus colibita, the subspecies. And the one that comes to Nigeria is Philoscopus colibita ibericus. I forgot to write it here, sorry. Iberian ChiefChef, and breeds in Spain and Portugal, in the Iberian Peninsula. And there is the one that mainly migrates down to Africa. Then in the east here, we have different subspecies. So in Sweden, we have two subspecies. We have these continental subspecies in the south, and then we have another subspecies in the north. But these subspecies are migrating towards southwest into continental Europe, into Spain, even into northern Africa. Whereas, again, the Iberian ChiefChef migrates from Iberia down to Sahel. What is characteristic for ChiefChef is that it has a very faint, quite faint supercilium. There's very little contrast in the face. It's quite gray all over, and it's quite dirty white gray on the belly, and that is going up here to the face. So it's much less contrasting than the other warblers we have seen. And the leg on ChiefChef is very dark to black. Another tricky group of birds are waders. All these four species are migrants. We have a common sandpiper, the wood sandpiper, the green sandpiper, and the green shank. If we come to how they behave, the common sandpiper is running along the shores or standing on stones, dipping a lot on his tail, wagging and like jerking up and down. The wood sandpiper do lap a bit, but they often walk a bit out in the water. And they are quite often in groups, 3, 4 to many, in more open areas. The green sandpiper is almost always alone, and that you find in a ditch or in a small pool or something quite secluded. And you see it first when you scare it and it fly away and saying, "Plivit, vit, plivit, vit, vit." The green shank is the biggest of these birds, and it's quite often wading quite far out in the water. It's very grayish, and this with long legs and a long, little bit upcurved bill. Another characteristic of the green shank is this white triangle on the back and the white, totally white tail and the white going up like a triangle on the back. The common sandpiper is also very gray, quite dark. The gray on the breast here is very sharp, distinguished from the white on the belly. The bill is short and stout, and when it flies, it has wing bars, which none of the other sandpipers have. So you see a sandpiper like this flying away with wing bars. It's a common sandpiper. The wood sandpiper has pale legs. In Sweden, we call it green leg. It is confusing compared to green shank because for us. But it has a spotted plumage, streaked neck and throat that with no sharp distinguish between the belly. And when I fly away, they don't have any wing band, and there's just a little white and then some barring or dust spots on the tail. And it's not very dark, it's going into a little brown. The green sandpiper is very dark, almost blackish, also under wing when they fly. And the rump is like very white, contrasting to the black back and also to the black edge of the tail. So you've got like a white, very, very conspicuous white square here on the tail of a green sandpiper. Again, you need to learn the calls because they are very characteristic for all of them. So if you know the call, you don't have to look at them. Lastly, in Nigeria, we have 4 white egrets. Actually, 4.5, because at the coast we have reef heron, which is normally gray, but they have white morph, as much as in places little egret here down to the left can have a gray morph. So that is another story. So we have cattle egret down here to the right. We have little egret. We have intermediate egret here in the middle, and we have great white egret. Little egret is quite easy to, probably the most easy to distinguish because of it. If you see its black legs and yellow feet, its slim body, long neck, black bill, you know what it is. Cattle egret is the smallest one, and it walks on dry land most of the time and hardly in water, following cattle, as its name say, taking insects in after them. But don't be surprised if it at times can be a bit hard actually to distinguish cattle egret from intermediate egret. So be aware of that it's harder than you think at times, because intermediate egret also follow cattle, and you find in dry land. And then they are crouching like that. So even if they are a bit bigger, but distance and things, can make it be a bit difficult. And then you have the great white egret with uniform black or gray legs and long stout bill. It's a big bird, but still can be hard to distinguish from intermediate. So when it comes to great and vs intermediate egret, the size, of course, but it's harder when you think to tell size of his egret at times. But in flight, for example, the wing beats of a great white egret is much slower than on intermediate. Because of size, it doesn't need, the great white don't need to beat as often as the intermediate egret. But the best character is, if you have him close, you can see the gape or the end of a bill, is that here, the gape of a great white egret protrude beyond the eye. If you look here on the intermediate egret, you see it stops under the eye or before the eye. Sometimes it's even longer than on this great egret I show here. So this is the best characteristic if you have a good view of them. If you have a good view again, is intermediate egret often have a black spot. The tip of a bill is black, also making the bill looking shorter than it is and stouter than it is. And then the leg of intermediate egret has not a uniform color. It's either darker up or paler up. So if you see the whole leg, you will see that a difference in color from up to down or from down to up. Here, and here on the last picture, we have these confusing names, which we talk often about, that if you look at the name in birds of West Africa, you have long-tailed cormorant is in the database of BirdLab surveys, reed cormorant, etc., etc. White-faced whistling duck, white-faced duck, European marsh harrier, Western marsh harrier, yellow-throated leaflove, yellow-throated leaflove or greenbull, common waterlie, brown-throated waterlie, long-tailed lossy starling, long-tailed starling, sulphur-breasted bushrike, orange-breasted bushrike, black-winged red bishop, black-winged bishop, northern red bishop, orange/northern red bishop. So that if you are a bit confused, try to look for their scientific name and use them to find the birds you want to log or watch. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the interesting and educative talk and for sharing your expertise with us. I'm sure all that have joined in today, you must have learned something, one at least, about field ornithology and some of these complicated species out there in the field. And one important thing is, if you really want to help yourself with identification, it's good that you find yourself out there all the time. I think that's the best way to learn from nature, go out, interact with nature, and then learn to be able to tell one bird aside the other. But then now, from the beginning, I said we can drop our questions if we have any in the chat. But then, if you have questions and you want to ask the professor directly, please kindly just raise your hands. Then I can call on you to ask your question. Thank you.
Don't be shy. We have a lot of people today. That's great.
Yeah, 44 participating. That's nice. Okay. So Boniface Abo, you have your hand up. Please ask your question.
Go ahead, Paul. You're breaking.
Yes, my question is about the last time.
Boniface, it's breaking. Can you print it instead?
Boniface, please kindly type your question because we can't hear you. All right. So please, we go to the, hello, Boniface, please kindly write your question down. Thank you. Longton's hand is up. Please, you can go ahead and ask your question, sir.
Longton, you are free to speak. We used to hear your voice. Unmute yourself, please, Longton. Dr. Longton.
Yes, I've done that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, my friend,
All
I can
right.
hear you.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prof, for more or less refreshing our heads about field ornithology. It was quite interesting, you know, but one of my question actually is, it's quite confusing that these names are being changed these days. And for me, that's a big challenge. Is there any document that you can just grab and then it can tell you that these are the changes?
Now yes, that you can follow that IOC bird list. They have like newsletters. They update special dates. I think they update the list twice a year, and I think it's similar for the other lists too. I only follow IOC.
Right.
And since I put all my observations in something similar to Birdlasser, there they get an update also from them when there have been changes. So I had to go through my observations to update them. So yes, it's problematic. It's annoying and pain in the. So, but that is how it is, and the knowledge increase. Some things are more important than others. Some things depends on people just like to change it. So we can't do anything. It's just to bear with it. But it's when you work with things like we do in Nigeria Bird Atlas, it has a lot of implications, and especially to try to reach out to people to understand what is going on. And I mean, for old people like me, I know about 5 names of greyback Cameroptera, and things have changed. I mean, I started with books hardly without pictures when I went to Africa. So
Wow.
So I mean, it's going forward, but it's sometimes in a pace that is very fast for some of us who is not working with it constantly. So it's just to try and do the best we can. There's no solution to it. This is just how it is. And if I we tried from NIBAB to put things out, like we have sent out severally about Cameropteras and the drongos, the goslings bunting, the white crowned cliffshed on Facebook, our Facebook page, and we will continue to do it. And that is why I take it up almost every time I talk. This is how it is.
Right. Well, one of the things that I was thinking is it possible to for us in Nigeria, since we have the bird atlas in place, perhaps is to isolate all the changes and have it even to a start on a paper, and people can have it. So then gradually we become so familiar with it. I think that may be, I am just suggesting that may be a way to go.
I mean, where should you publish it? You mean on where should we have at least?
Well, if we're dealing with Nigerian birds and they are also affected, as you have mentioned in the IUC, and if you isolate those changes that has been made, and you have them as a checklist with the old names and the new ones, then I think that can help.
Yeah. I mean, I can put that list, what we have here on, that is basically the species. Like I can put that on NIBAB and African Bird Atlas also. I mean, if you go outside West Africa, you have there is other questions, other things that are different. So the one I showed here is the main I think of now. There is otherwise before. There is also among the hornbills, but I think that was before birds of West Africa, so they are now covered. I mean, one big thing is that, especially if you go to the forest, you have what we call Lower Guinea and Upper Guinea, right?
Yes.
And before you have complementary species. I mean, and one very obvious two complementary species is our gray-necked Picatates and the white-necked Picatates in Upper Guinea and Lower Guinea. They are very obviously two species. But there is a lot, when you come to green bulls and hornbills and a lot of other species, the difference is much more subtle. And almost all these species that you have is some sort close related, but Upper Lower Guinea, I will expect all of them will be divided. We have, for example, Western and Eastern bearded green bull. We have all of these. We have they have splitted the gray parrot now in gray parrot and Timmy parrot. I mean, you can just continue. So if you go to Ghana, you need to know that you are in Ghana. You see Timmy parrot. You don't see gray parrot anymore.
Right.
So it's or if it's in Liberia, I don't even know yet. So it's a lot. But for Nigeria, it's mainly these 5 species I talked about today. But I will put that list again. Nigerian Bird Atlas.
Right. Thank you, Prof.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you. We'll move on to Olatunji. Please, you have the floor. Ask your question.
Hello, good evening. Prof. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation. It's been long we saw you, we see your face in Abuja Bird Club.
Soon.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Actually, I just want you to help me on how I can learn more about bird sound. What book can you recommend for me?
Yeah, there is this Seno Canto. I write it here. Seno Canto.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
If you go in there, you will find, you can search for any species and you will see all recordings. That it's like YouTube for bird calls. So people send in their bird songs or calls. So if you want to learn it, you can download them to your own things. And then we have, if you download African Bird Club are birds of West Africa. You have a lot of calls in that.
Okay.
Also, but
Okay,
it's
thank
a
you very
bit
much.
slow.
So thank you, Prof. And please, if you've already asked your question, can you kindly put your hand down so that I will know the exact number that we still have up.
Long tongue, take your hand down. Thank you.
Okay, so Samaila Mohammed, please, you have the floor. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. My name is, like we said, Mohammed Samaila Alkali. I'm Airport Wildlife Hazard Control Officer working with Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, currently in Kano. Prof, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Before now, I used to have a conflict in identifying yellow-billed kites and black kites, because these we consider them one of the problem species we have in the airports, especially in the areas of bird strike and other things. So I understand that black kites are pelagic migrants that are in Nigeria between September to March. So yeah. I actually want to know, Prof, is there any particular region that they come in Nigeria during this window, or they can be found everywhere in the country within this period of September?
So that's
my question, Prof.
Yes, the black kite are, they are kind of like insect eaters, and a lot of insect eaters. They move from Europe because it become too cold. So so they move out to spend their non-breeding season, what we call winter, in, for example, Africa, where many go. And they, as you say, they migrate south and arrive in Nigeria September, October, and then they migrate north again. And their migration in the same, a little bit match the yellow-billed kite migration. Because as you know, in Kano, you don't have yellow-billed kites during all the year. So during the rains, the yellow-billed kites move north. So you get much more kites during the rains than you have during the dry season. So in all places all over Nigeria, the yellow-billed kite will always outnumber the black kite. So the black kite will be the odd bird in Nigeria. You don't see it much. So most of you have is always yellow-billed kite. And there is big migrations of it. In Jos, we can see hundreds passing in a day in April when they go north, and the same now, they will see them going south now in October. If you haven't started to see them, you will start to see them. So there is migratory patterns both in black kite and yellow-billed kite, and they sometimes they probably will migrate together because the direction and timing is the same.
Okay. Mr. Samaila, I hope you're clear. Hello? Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. You have answered my question. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. So now, please, Mr. Waldy, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Okay. I really appreciate Prof for the presentation. It's quite expository. The question I have is there any trick on recognizing calls? Because it's one thing that I've been finding challenging on the field. Is there a certain trick that one can adopt in trying to differentiate calls, especially while surveying in a forest? Because some of the calls gets quite confusing.
Yes, I know. And I'm deaf, so on one ear, so it's even more confusing. So especially in the forest, because you don't know where to look. I mean, if you are in a flat area, it's only 2 dimensions to look at. But if you're in a forest, it's 3 dimensions. It's to listen, and be out in the field. That's the only way. And look at the bird when they call. And I'm gonna try to, with most phones, you can do a crap recording, then you go home. You can get, I mean, it's, when you hear a call in a place, in a forest, you don't have to look for one of 11,000 birds. I mean, you can go down to, in the forest of Nigeria, you go down to, it can be one of 50, 100 bird species. And with among them, you can, with some smartness, experience, you narrow down to a few species. Or if you have a call, you send it to Talatu or someone, and they will tell you what it is. And then if you heard it and you have a name, you will remember it to the next time. But there are people who are more skilled. I mean, it's like, especially some you hear music in different ways and you hear bird calls in different ways. So some people have good to learn calls. And if you have good knowledge of many calls, you can also, like, with the experience you have, you can like find out or think that since it's not that species, because that I know, it must be that species, because that species I don't know. And then you pinpoint like that, you go home and listen to all the species you don't know, and then you might find it. So like for everything in field ornithology, it's just practice. And sit at home, if you have your sum up with bird calls and you listen to them before. I had started with records. So I sat, my grandmother had records, so I was playing records. I didn't play rock music or dance music and things like that. I played bird calls. That was my Friday afternoon, evening fun. So that's where I learned it. So it's different ways, but it's to practice and try to record, like same as taking a crap picture. Even with a crap recording, there are people out there who can send to who have experience, who can help you out.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I hope your question is well answered, Mr. Weldy. Okay, so James, your hand is up. Please, you have the floor. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, Prof.
Hey, James.
All right, Prof. Thank you for the great presentation. I think you've done justice to trying to establish the affinity that the grayback Cameroptera shares with the grayback Cameroptera. But I'm quite concerned with the unclassified status of the grayback Cameroptera, because I was working on a research lately, just recently, and I tried to get the classification of the grayback Cameroptera, and it seems unclassified in the IUCN red list. What could be the possible issue with the grayback Cameroptera? Is it maybe the subject of data deficiency, or what could be the problem?
I don't know if, I mean, I'm surprised because I don't know that. I mean, maybe in some areas, like where the, I mean, certainly in Nigeria, we don't know anything. So that is data deficient. Otherwise, I mean, the criteria for becoming on the red list is that we have had a decrease with 50% during the last 5 years, which we of course can't say anything about in Nigeria because we simply don't know. So I have no idea how they've been thinking. I will check it up. We can talk about it.
All right, Prof.
All right.
Before I need to stop.
Oh, please, okay, Mayor Yellow, can you mute your mic, please? All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us once more. I will now give Dr. Talatu some few minutes to say something before we wrap up today's webinar. That's if there's no any further question.
Thank you very much, Nachi moderator, for leading the presentation. Prof, thank you very much. I learned all over again, I must say. The presentation was very, very interesting. I just want to thank everyone for making our time to join. And as I saw in the chat, some people were asking if the presentation can be shared with them. Sure, we're going to put it up in our YouTube channel and share it also on our Facebook page. So you get to get the presentation anytime you want. So that is not a problem. Thank you for sparing the time to attend our webinar. Keep a date with us again next month. It's going to be really interesting presentation as well. Thank you very much. That's all I have
Thank you.
to say.
All right, thank you, Dr. Talatu. Prof, I don't know if you have some last
I don't
words.
know if we will do the recording. What will be if someone want me to send the, if I can't get, I don't know how we can share the presentation, but you can always send me an email and I will send it.
If you want to share the presentation, Prof, you can save it as PDF.
Okay.
If you save it as PDF, then you can share with whosoever wants to have it. It must not be the PowerPoint, so you can just save it as PDF and send it to anybody that wants to have it. But we're going to make the video available anyway.
I put my email here for everyone to see now, because not, since you have a bigger group than usual, so not everyone have my email. So if you're very welcome to send me emails with questions and photos and recordings and everything. And if he or you can, I know that both Talatu and Nanshin is very happy to receive this kind of emails, so you can parasitize on their knowledge too. So yeah, but my email is here if you want it, and I'm on Facebook. You can also put questions on NIBAP or African Bird Atlas FB page, and we will answer it. So yes, I will come to Nigeria soon, November. So I will join Abuja Bird Club and other bird clubs as possible.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Please do keep a date for our subsequent webinars. We'll keep you posted using our social media handle. I would like to say that if it's possible, kindly just put up your video so that we can see your face, and then we have a screenshot of people actually joining us. Or you can just put up your video and just say the final bye before we finish up the meeting. Thank you so much.
Dr. Sam, you're not supposed to do this while driving.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so please do take care and good night. Have a wonderful night rest. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye bye.
Hey.
Bye.
Bye.